All right, rookies. Look, you know how much we like our theme park music here on UUOP. Well, we're going to talk to Andy Garfield, the composer behind the music for Men in Black Alien Attack and Halloween Horror Nights 29's Marathon of Mayhem. You are listening to episode 400 of the Unofficial Universal Orlando podcast. So let the mayhem begin. Hey everyone, welcome to this very momentous show. I can't believe we have finally hit episode 400.
I know.
Joining me for what feels like all of them, Tracy.
Hello everyone, happy 400.
Darren, you must be nearing somewhere near most of them at this point.
I'm pretty close, I gotta say. What's up, Internet?
And Chris, you must be 100 or so at this point.
Yeah, I think I was on 300.
So I will introduce Andy Garfield. Andy, thanks for joining us for episode 400.
My pleasure to be here for the first time.
I am excited to talk about the music for my favourite attraction in the world. But I've been told by Andy I haven't visited any of the Asian parks, so it's fine.
Hey, you can take me to the Asian parks, that's fine. I'm not going to
Not at the moment.
Well, no, not at the moment. Not at the moment. In a while.
I will do my best to remember as much as I can.
Awesome.
Well, before we get into talking about your work for Universal Orlando, can you give our listeners a brief history of yourself, how you got into creating music and working in the themed entertainment industry?
Sure. Well, I grew up in Anaheim, California, not too far from Disneyland, and I spent my summers pretty much at Disneyland when I was growing up. So I was always into Disneyland and, had a really good education about, quality themed entertainment just by default. I was really into animation and music as a kid. And eventually I chose music and I went and studied at USC, the University of Southern California here in Los Angeles with Buddy Baker, who you may know from Haunted Mansion fame and others, World's Fair music and all that kind of stuff. He had just started a film and television scoring program there at USC. And I went to him and said, I want to do music for theme parks. And he was thrilled. So I went to USC, studied with Buddy. I worked at Disney Imagineering while I was in school for what at the time was called the audio video department. So I did a lot of film and television, video games, and my first theme park attraction that I worked on by myself was the Men in Black Alien Attack with Dave Cobb.
Awesome.
Wow. And so I've just been doing theme park stuff ever since. I always half-jokingly said that I was only doing film and television projects between theme park projects.
Now, Andy, I've told you before we started recording that Men in Black is my favourite attraction anyway. I have ridden it more than any other ride in the world at this point. And it has become a staple of any podcast meet that we have out in Orlando. I think we've had 2 little mini meets and then we had a major meet last year, the weekend event. And a Men in Black challenge has been part of every one of those meets because it's just become just such part of us, I think, at this point.
Yeah, definitely.
So just talking about the attraction as a whole is something we absolutely adore. So let's get back to the beginning. I know you said you're going to struggle to remember some of this because it was quite a while ago. Can you remember how you were approached first to sort of from the Universal team and what sort of pointers you were given as far as what music they wanted you to create for the attraction?
Sure, it's kind of an interesting story. I had been friends with Dave Cobb already for 4 or 5 years at that point in 1999 when I was brought on board. I was 25 years old and had done a bunch of video games, and I had done an animated series for Fox Kids called Bad Dog. And since I'd already also one of the video games, the very first video game I did was Goosebumps Escape from Horrorland for DreamWorks games. And I had, met Steven Spielberg as a result of that game. So Dave, as you know, was the creative director of the attraction, and they'd gotten pretty far down the road when Universal realized that they had long assumed that they could just use the music from the movie in the attraction, and then they got pretty far down the road until they realized that they couldn't because it was so expensive to license that music, and even to re-record the music would be prohibitively expensive, especially since they were way over budget in every other way, and they were looking for ways to cut the budget. So Dave called me up and said, hey, do you want to do the music for this attraction? We have almost no money. And I'm like, That's my specialty. But no, I was thrilled. And even though I was very young and I'd never worked on a theme park attraction by myself, it was a big risk for them, on paper, to have this 25-year-old kid score this, $80 million attraction. But like I said, there was all kinds of plausible deniability that Dave Cobb pitched me with.
Right.
Number one, it was essentially a video game that you rode. And I had done a bunch of video games, including a video game for Steven Spielberg, who was the executive producer of the attraction.
Awesome.
So, there was all kinds of, good reasons that they could trust me because, of this, very tenuous relationship that I had with Spielberg and his team and the video game industry. So, of course, I think I did some demos. I probably did of like what direction the music for the actual ride could go. But what's funny is that I remember the bulk of my work being post-scoring the pre-show videos. There were 4 or 5 pre-show videos that were, a few minutes each. And compared to the actual length of music, the amount of music in the actual attraction on the ride itself, I mean, the pre-shows were, probably 60-70% of the actual music that I wrote for the attraction. Oh. Because, the ride's only like 5.5 minutes long at that. And the scenes, the music, like the loops are probably only 30 seconds. Every other scene is a loop and a trigger. Right. So the triggers are only 10-15 seconds, and then the loops are maybe 20 or 30 seconds. So there's about 4 or 5 minutes of music on the actual ride itself, or less.
I know Darren and I were talking about it earlier, and it's like listening to the soundtrack that you sent us. We were like, I don't recognize half of that music, and it's because usually when we're on the ride, we're too busy trying to shoot things than listening to what's going on.
Yeah.
Right. And
but it's like you said, the pre-show score is the thing that
Yeah.
It's like ingrained in your mind.
Yeah.
And you know what? I don't know. I'm sure you guys and a lot of your listeners watched our show last week with Dave Cobb on the actual anniversary, where we talked about the song Universe and You, which originally was not part of the plan at all. After I'd done a fair amount of the work, probably all the pre-show music, I went down to Florida in January of 2000 and visited the attraction with Dave for a few days, and we were walking the track. This was actually the day before they started cycling the vehicles. We walked the track, and we came around the corner into the unload of the Universe and You attraction, in quotes. I was like, oh man, we got to have the song. There's got to be that World's Fair, It's a Small World Universe and You song. And Dave's like, we just don't have any more money. I'm like, that doesn't matter anymore. We got to have the song. I mean, I'm not going to give you a change order, when I know there's no more money, but like the attraction needs the song. We got to do the song. And he's just like, all right, as long as you don't mind doing it and, absorbing any recording costs and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, sure. And so he and Tim Bernardi was the document controller for the attraction. And he and Dave went across the street to the beer bar and wrote the lyrics in like 30 minutes. They were like, this is what it is. Just like it wrote itself. And then the music similarly sort of wrote itself. I knew exactly what it needed to be. Needed to be an homage to the Sherman Brothers and Buddy Baker. And it all came together really, really quickly. And we recorded at my friend Debbie Lurie's apartment down in the Fairfax district of Los Angeles with just 4 or 5 of us singing all the parts.
Wow.
And that's what's playing there today, or not today, but when it's operating.
Yeah.
Played for 20 years.
Wow.
So Andy, like you were saying, the ride itself is based around a fictional science tour of World Expo called The Universe and You. Real quick, we're going to play a little clip from the main theme that you created that we just spoke about.
Should we be frightened? Should we be scared? Why take a chance? Let's all be prepared. So much to learn and so much to see. A galaxy destined for you and for me. And in the better tomorrow, and when we leave this
When you told me you were 25 when you worked on that, That killed me because that sounds like I'm sorry, it sounds like it was written by somebody like Buddy, somebody that was around during the World's Fair. So that's amazing. Kudos to you, man.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I was such a punk kid too. I was like really skinny with dyed black hair, and I looked like I stepped right out of the Matrix.
Awesome.
You can just see you with like headphones walking down the street hearing that.
Yeah.
You saw the picture I sent you of me on site
Yes.
in January of 2000. Yeah, I was going to the goth clubs every weekend. No joke.
And then come up with something like that. It's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, sounds brilliant. Now, I don't know if people know this, but the inspiration for the song, the clip we've just played, has a bit of a Disney heritage, doesn't it, Andy? So can you tell us some more about that?
Oh, well, yeah, it was an homage. No, I mean, it was an homage to the Sherman Brothers and Buddy Baker, and I actually got to play it for Buddy shortly before he passed, and he was thrilled. He just loved it, and I think he played it for Dick and Bob Sherman, but I don't really remember if he did or if I ever found out. But yeah, I mean, just the style of the melody and the orchestration, all the orchestration, like the rest of the attraction, was all performed on keyboards at my house with samples. None of it is a real orchestra.
Cool.
Especially, and I listened to it today and I'm like, wow, that sounds pretty good for 1999.
Yeah.
Yeah.
20 years ago, I mean, sample technology was still pretty new for me. Like, I remember it being like really a heartfelt love letter kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it does feel like something that could be on Carousel of Progress, like something that you could go back to and like refrain, and then go on to, well, times are different now.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, growing up at Disneyland and even having visited Florida a few times as a kid, it was just sort of like permanently ingrained in my mind of like, that kind of style. And I had a lot of records, Disney records when I was a kid growing up, of like, It's a Small World and like Music in the Parks and things like that. And, and like things like even like the Muppet movie, and Broadway musicals. I had a lot of Broadway musical soundtracks in the house growing up, and just, it was just in there and it just came flowing out.
I'm still trying to see this juxtaposition by this goth kid that has all these Broadway show musicals and stuff in his house.
Yeah, and I'm straight. Like, yeah, I am large and contain multitudes.
But it is. I love that piece of music because I know the cue music and stuff is. It's like the instrumental version of that as well.
Oh yeah. So like, since we didn't have the song, like I don't even remember what we were going to do for like half the cue stuff, like the elevator and the lobby and all that, because we ended up using the Universe and You theme everywhere, and like it's out in the exterior queue and it's in that vibes section in the elevator. It's funny what we got away with talking about not being able to use any of the actual soundtrack from the movie. I did this, this beatnik flute bongo version of the Men in Black song by Will Smith.
Okay.
In the lobby or in the elevator, one of those. I'm not sure if they use it anymore because it's so rare that they do the full show.
Uh-huh.
And you don't, with the elevator, you don't just walk straight through the elevator.
Yeah, and it kills us. It's one of the things that when we get that full show, it's so awesome. But you're right, it's few and far between now.
Yeah. I think I've only maybe had it happen once or twice ever, and I'm just like shrug my shoulders. I'm like, oh well, if only you knew. So we did get away with this, this Muzak version of the Men in Black song. Here come the Men in Black, that song.
Yeah.
There it is. I think it is on the. Is it in that zip file that I sent you?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Anyway,
Muzak in there, yeah.
So that was a little thing we snuck in there.
That's awesome.
I don't know what we would have done without the song, because the song is everything now for that ride.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Now, before you reach the final version of the music, when you're in the process like that, specifically with Universe and You, did you have any compositions that like you weren't happy with, or Universe wasn't happy with? It sounds like you guys just came together in a night, like you said, and it happened.
Yeah, it was funny too. I have a memory of like I said, I post-scored means I was sent videotapes, like actual VHS cassettes of the pre-shows, and then they were striped with time code, and then I would score. I literally had a VCR, and and then my computer would chase the time code signal from the tape, and that's how I would score the videos. Now, that's how I did TV for a long time until computers became fast enough and had enough memory to play video files. And then there was months between finishing the pre-shows and the actual ride music. And I remember Dave Cobb called me up one day. He's like, so we kind of need the music now for the ride. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, so it's almost done. And then I think over a long weekend, I did most of it for the ride.
Nice.
Wow.
Because like I said, there's not a lot of music on the actual ride itself. I mean, it's just, and a lot of it, I don't know how granular and nerdy you guys want to get, but I mean, the main sample library that I used for the ride was this old library called Flash Tracks, TRAKZ, I think. And it was this trip hop propeller headish sample library, which is a bunch of weird percussion loops, that's the really fast, like kind of stuff that, emblematic of trip hop. So it was that and another sample library called Distorted Reality with a bunch of other weird percussion loops. And that's most of it until you get to some of the more cinematic sounding stings like the ambush and New York Street and the big bug at the end. But all that, the load music and all the other hit the streets section is all that a lot of that is that Flash Tracks trip hop library.
Nice.
And it was all done on I had a whole bunch of Akai S5000 samplers and a Roland JV 1080 synthesizer, and that's about it.
Nice. Wow. Cool. You would not listening to it. You would not think that. No. It sounds like
now I have
huge production.
And now I have terabytes of samples, and I've got more RAM than that computer had in I don't know. It's I probably had like a 500 megabyte hard drive.
Yeah. I thought it was massive.
It's such a testament, though, isn't it, when you think that your first theme park attraction that you got to score on your own is something that's been around for 20 years at this point, and especially when you look at Universal Orlando, how quickly they replace their attractions, the fact that it's still there.
Do not jinx it.
No, because I've said before, if they ever rip it out, I'm never going again.
Okay. I don't think they would tear it out unless they had a really good reason. The GSATs are so high. It's still one of the highest scoring attractions, no pun intended, in the park. People love it. I mean, it's just, one of those evergreen attractions that, just, have a broad appeal. Like Dave said, like everybody from little kids to great grandma can go on the ride and, have a good time. And you don't even have to have seen the movie. It's kind of like the Waterworld Spectacular. No one's seen the movie, but it doesn't matter.
Exactly. It is my favourite attraction. I ride it. The way that it speaks to the fact that I am a very competitive person.
We're a very competitive family.
Yes,
actually.
we are.
Why is it your favorite attraction? What about it, besides the music, obviously?
It is something that I can ride over and over again. And because it's not, I think mainly it's because it's, I love the films anyway. I'm a big fan of those films. Even the new one wasn't too bad, to be honest.
It's
because
not
the game part about it.
Yeah, because
I think it's a big thing.
Because it's not a passive attraction. It is different every time you ride it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas theme park attractions, when you ride over and over and over again, they can become
still
a little bit. Whereas that doesn't. Let me be honest. It desperately needs some TLC because a lot of the guns. Darren always gets the gun that doesn't work.
Of course.
I now recognize the gun that doesn't work.
Because even to the point where a lot of the guns we noticed when we were over in February, that a lot of the silver paint scratched off, and it really does need some TLC. I'd love Universal to turn around and go, do you know what? This is that well-loved attraction. Here's $10 million. Let's go and bring it up to 2020 standard. I don't know whether $10 million is a lot of money for an attraction or whatever, but
I was going to say, well, give me $10 million. I'll see how far that goes.
It wouldn't take that much to do that. I mean, I work a lot with the Belgian company Alterface and their technology for interactive rides like that. With the guns and the targets, the targeting system that they have. It would be well under $500,000 to completely replace the targeting system in that ride and make it infrared. and then you wouldn't then you would be mapping the space rather than actually shooting those little round light sensors.
Yeah.
All right, crowdfunding time.
Yeah.
It would dramatically increase the playing area, where you could have way more targets and all that kind of stuff, and then just like you said, the TLC, it would cost quite a bit to replace all the guns.
Yeah.
Or weapons. We can't say guns. The weapons.
Sorry. Yes.
Oh, another fun fact that I just remembered: the Doofus and Do Right safety video. I did that months after the ride opened.
Wow.
If I recall, it was way late in the game, and I was working at the time for James Cameron, the director. We were doing this crazy website where he was going to go and broadcast live from the Titanic and all kinds of stuff, and it ended up not happening. But I was actually recording. I actually scored the safety video in his office.
Wow.
That's cool.
Not
Isn't
his
that
office,
just-
but like in the building that we had.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I think it was after the ride opened, but it was a while later.
I love those pre-show videos. They're
I
so
appreciate
fun.
Yeah, definitely. I think that really is honestly a big part of why I love the ride so much too. Is not so much the on the ride itself. I do like that part, but I like the feeling of the World's Fair, that
Yes.
old timey feeling, and the music is really a huge part of what puts you there.
Mm-hmm.
So honestly, when you said that, like, other than the music, no, really, the music is a huge part of it for me.
Yeah.
It wouldn't
Oh,
feel the same without it.
Well, that's very nice of you to say. I mean, you're right. It wouldn't be the same without it. But it was just a really amazing opportunity to get to, play in that world and contribute to, who knew how long this would last.
Yeah, and then to use like that happy-go-lucky music as kind of it is kind of like a sinister mask, like a mask over this like weird underground thing that's
Yes.
happening in
It's
front of
very
everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually a very subversive ride. And that's one of the reasons that the Universe and You is so like over the top, exuberantly, happy. Is it's that smiling while crying kind of feeling.
Definitely.
It is though, because you get full circle, like you said. You've got the instrumental version as you're going through the lift and the queue and stuff, and then you come because obviously you're entering the Universe and You. Then everything that happens in between you're not supposed to remember. Then you come out at the end with the full song version of it, so
Yeah.
you go full circle through the whole thing. It's going to make me cry not being able to ride it for a long time. It's going to kill me.
So theme park designers and manufacturers like to hide little details and references in their work. Is there anything hidden in the music you composed that is a little personal touch or an Easter egg?
Let me think. Like I said before, we snuck in the Men in Black song into the queue in the muzak of the elevator, and I don't think I have any more nuggets of Men in Black music to mine.
I did notice a little bit in the Universe and You, and I don't know whether it was just me looking for it or not, but there did seem to be notes of the actual Danny Elfman score in there.
Oh, it's a sound like ba 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 ba
Yeah,
ba ba.
that's it.
It's like pretty much as close as we could get to a Men in Black theme. That the score, the feel of the score, with the orchestration, the shape of the melody. I think it's probably in the same key even. But yeah, we were skirting copyright with that.
It's weird how
As you have
close
to
you
do.
can get to it, though, without it being classed as...
Oh yes.
Because it sounds
Yeah, I
exactly
mean-
like it to me.
I mean, having studied some musicology in school, there's ways where you go up instead of down at certain points, and in terms
Yeah.
of changing there's music is rhythm, pitch, time.
Yeah.
And you can manipulate all those things in such a way that it's different but similar. And and because it's a theme park attraction, you have moments to get a idea across.
Yeah.
And so it's all pretty on the nose.
It's such a shame a lot of the theme park music isn't more readily available.
I know. We keep saying this.
Well, it's all about ownership and licensing.
Yeah.
Especially with Disney. I know it may come as a shock, but the music budgets for theme park attractions isn't really huge generally, and one of the things that happens a lot is the composers will retain the rights to the music, or it's a total buyout. And also then there's issues of, residuals for musicians as well. If they're recorded in the United States, especially in LA with union musicians, you can't just release an album without paying residuals to the musicians. And it's all kinds of music licensing is a mess.
Yeah.
And it's overly complicated and convoluted, and is not user friendly in any way at all. It's designed to be as restrictive as possible and make as much money for the musicians and the writers as possible. But in doing so, it has become very complicated and expensive. So, a lot of theme park music is there's a cost benefit ratio of setting it up so that it can be released on an album, because that's a reuse. It's a different use from the original intent. And there's all the publishing and mastering and rights issues, and it's a nightmare.
Yeah, it's weird because we've talked about it before. No, all the music for Islands of Adventure was composed by William Kidd, and we had him on the show years ago at this point. And that CD used to be available in the parks up until I think about 2005, 2006, and then they just stopped. And it seemed so weird to get rid of it when people are bigger fans of Universal now than they ever have been, and that CD would probably make a killing of people buying it, and it's not available.
But maybe it was costing them more in residuals than they were making.
Well, they probably looked at this, and they probably printed, say, 5,000 or 10,000 of those CDs, and it took 6 years to sell them all.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So they're just like, no, we're not doing that again.
Okay.
Just fair enough.
Shame.
So last thing on Men in Black, we assume you've ridden the ride.
It's funny is I hadn't ridden it I didn't actually ride the ride until I think 2012 or 2013.
Whoa.
Yeah, when I went out for IAPA one year, and I finally got to go on it, because I remember going before to Florida sometime around 2005, 2006, but it was closed.
Oh.
Or refurbished or whatever.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to go on it. It was crushing. And then finally I got to go on it in 2012 or so. I think it was 2012.
Okay.
And boy was it a delight.
Do you know what your high score is?
Oh, I have no idea.
The correct answer is you maxed out.
You're supposed to say 99999.
Maxed out.
Oh no, I don't think I'm capable of that.
We won't tell. Just doesn't everybody listening. We won't tell anybody.
I've probably only ridden. I've ridden the ride quite a lot since, because I go to IAPA every year.
Yeah.
IAPA is the trade show down there that we have for all of us carny folk. I've probably ridden it 20 or 30 times now.
Oh, I hate to break it to you, Andy, but I think I've ridden it more times than you.
I have no doubt.
We don't do anything else when we're there, to be fair.
No, in fair, we don't a lot of the time. I think when we came out in October last year for a week, and it was the ride we rode the most again. We did it 9 times in a row. I think in 2005 when we came over, we just literally got on, got off, got on, got off, got on, got off.
I would like to point out that was pre-children.
It was.
Yeah.
And it gets to the point where they're just like, just come around here.
It's just
you
easy.
don't have to go all the way through the line again.
It's just an easy one again, especially when your bag's already in the locker. It's fine.
Yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, we are going to talk about something else that I know we all love,
Oh, yeah.
possibly as much as Men in Black. So we will take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, and we'll be back.
Have you taken a stroll down Diagon Alley and visited Gringotts Bank? Taken a ride through New York with Jimmy Fallon? Visited the Truffalo Trees in Seuss Landing, or hung out with a real-life Transformer? No? Then what are you waiting for? At Universal Orlando Resort, there truly is an option for everyone. Or if you're leaning a little more towards pixie dust rather than wands and potions, Disney destinations around the globe await your arrival. No matter the adventure, our sponsors have you covered. Be sure to let the experts at Mouse and Muggle Travel Company take care of all your travel needs, earning the distinction of being an earmarked agency specializing in Disney destinations, as well as becoming one of the first to be named a You Preferred agency with Universal Parks and Resorts Vacations. Mouse and Muggle Travel Company will ensure you receive top-rated customer service. Just visit mouseandmuggle.com to fill out a no-obligation quote request, or send your request to info@mouseandmuggle.com. Their team can take care of you no matter where in the world you want to go. With a flick of their wand and a little bit of pixie dust, the process will be so seamless, some might even say it's simply magical.
Welcome back, everyone. We are joined by Andy Garfield talking about his musical composition work for Universal Orlando, and we are going to move on to something much more recent than Men in Black Alien Attack, and that is Darren.
Yes. So the second thing you worked on at Universal Orlando, which was last year's Halloween Horror Night Lagoon show, Marathon of Mayhem, which everybody went insane for.
It was amazing.
And I think everybody here will agree is the best nighttime show we've seen. And
Anyway,
you can pull up my recording. I can verify it's
yes.
the best show ever seen in a theme park.
Yes.
Oh,
Agreed.
that's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. So we of course talked online and offline about this, but for the listeners, can you tell everyone what your input into the show was?
Sure. Well, I got involved through my friend Jason McManus, who was the director of the show, the creative director of the show. I'm sure they had a different name for what he did, but he directed the show, wrote and directed the show essentially for a company called Thinkwell Group out here, which Dave Cobb actually is the senior creative director for. So Jason and I have been friends for many years. We actually had a company together briefly called Lightning in a Bottle. So when he was put on the show, obviously he wanted me to work on it with him, but we didn't know what the show was going to be, because, all the different IPs and all the licensing, the music licensing, it takes months and months to negotiate usage and rights, even to re-record the stuff for like Stranger Things and Ghostbusters and dealing with Sony and Netflix and whatever, and all the different publishing companies and everything is a nightmare.
I can imagine.
But so I eventually got on the show, and of course, I had to do a demo because I guess Thinkwell and some of the people, the media team there, much of the music on my website, and that they had was not really this kind of heavy industrial kind of style that they wanted to do. I think it was sort of, can't remember. It's synth pop. They wanted to do like a synth pop, synth wave kind of, but like dark wave kind of style. And so I did this like 2 or 3 minute demo for them, and they were like, oh yeah, okay. I think the other people, I don't know for sure who the other composers were. I think one of them was Lou Fagenson, who also worked on the Warner Brothers World Abu Dhabi with me. But anyway, I ended up doing the show. And what's funny is the show was constantly evolving while we were working on it, and segments were getting moved around. The show ended up being a lot shorter than we had originally planned. I think we had timed it out. It was going to be 15 minutes, and then it became like, it was 8.5 minutes.
Director's cut.
Oh, trust me, there's no extra anything. We barely made it as it is. And then, so I worked on, as you know, the most of the bulk of my work was in the finale, the last 3.5 minutes of the show, where, you hear the sort of theme, the original theme, then all the other themes sort of quoted. And then I had the idea to add all of the sound effects of the tape rewinding and it was Jason's idea to the show was going to stop and rewind and then start again for the button at the end. But I had the idea, like, what if we actually have like the VHS loading sounds and all that kind of stuff. And so I added that in one of my first drafts, and it's what's in the show now, or what was in the show. And John Baker, who mixed the show on site, he added a bunch more sound effects too, and I think it sounded great. So there was another person involved in the show. It's a famous music producer, Dave Audet. He's a music producer and DJ remixer kind of guy, music producer for I don't know, big famous stars like J-Lo and whatever. So he did the Stranger Things and Ghostbusters remix that you hear in the show, and then we had the Killer Clowns from Outer Space theme.
Oh, yes.
And I augmented that. I put a bunch of synth basses and other stuff on that as well.
So good,
just
that section.
like layered stuff on top of it.
Oh yeah. That one really buzzes.
Oh,
Yeah.
It really does. It's just
Love
because it
that.
kind of stops, doesn't it? And then you get dum, dum,
Yeah.
dum, da, 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 and it's like, and it's like the hairs on the back of your neck go up.
It's a very emotional response.
And then the main theme is like a buzzsaw, like you said, coming through. So it's awesome.
So good.
The whole thing. And I seem to remember, Andy, sorry, I'm cutting in. I know when I posted on Twitter last year after seeing it that it's the first nighttime show that I've seen at Universal that finally got me to tears. And I seem to remember tweeting, can you tell me which parts it was? And I feel really guilty now because I know it wasn't the bits that you worked on.
Charming.
Well, which part brings you to tears?
The beginning of the Stranger Things section every time. And I don't know because I like the show, but I'm not that big of a fan of it. But I don't know. I think it's just everything that came together at Horror Nights last year for us, and the Ghostbusters section as well. To be honest,
Yeah, Ghostbusters is great. That's one of my favorite parts. That remix is just so slapping. It's so cool. You know, I mean, I don't think I could have. I certainly couldn't have done that. I mean, that's a highly specialized kind of remix and producing capability that I just don't have. So, you know, I could have done something like that, but it certainly wouldn't have been as good.
I personally love like that rewinding section and just
Yeah.
it like stops, does this cool rewind thing, and just puts you right back into the party. It's awesome.
Yeah, that was all Jason's idea. It was really fun. So the way the finale came together. So Jason McManus, he's also a very talented and accomplished musician. He was the original drummer for some rock band. I can't remember, out of Texas or Oklahoma. Remember it. It'll come to me. Oh, I think it was American Rejects. I think he was the original drummer for the American Rejects, if I remember.
Oh, cool.
Anyway, so he's an extremely talented and versatile instrumentalist himself, and he came over one afternoon to work on the finale, and I was still writing it and producing it, and we ended up sitting here in my studio for like 14 hours straight until like the sun came up the next morning, collaborating on the finale together. And he would help me program the drums, and we worked out a lot of the timing and actual performance together, sitting in the studio together for like 14 hours straight. And then very little changed after that on the finale. It's just maybe some timings here and there. We did 2 or 3 versions of the button, like a long version and a shorter version. I forget which one we used. I think it was the longer version for the very end after the rewind section.
because you kind of get to that point where you think it's over,
Yeah.
but it's not.
Yeah. No, that's it's the button.
Yeah.
Now, if for you guys listening, if you never visited Horror Nights last year, first of all, what's wrong with you?
Yes.
Yes.
Second of all,
You missed.
here is a quick section of the finale.
Tracy, I picked this. I said I picked this very specifically for you because I know there's one section of it that you absolutely adore.
Okay.
It gets me
so much.
It gets me in the feels just listening to it now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was like a giddy kid when that bit played the first time.
That's so it was always the plan to use Swan Lake as the theme for the Dracula, but we didn't know how we were going to do it. So I suggested finding a public domain version of it. So it's a very old recording of Swan Lake that I just got off of some public domain music website, and just chopped it up and gapped and resampled it. Just literally cutting it up, moving it around.
Well, I greatly appreciate it because I was absolutely blown away by it. Because I love that piece of music anyway, but then just to hear that whole reinvention of it,
It works so well.
it's amazing.
What's funny is that I guess most people probably associate that with Dracula and think it's like the Dracula theme, but it's really this old classical music.
I was
I
raised.
wonder,
on
like,
classical
anybody that
music.
gets dragged to the ballet is just like, hey, wait a second.
Yeah.
Dracula? Right.
Dracula the ballet.
Yeah.
Oh.
I say I've listened to that so much because Attractions Magazine's video of the show is on there, and I have listened to the crap out of it since we came back from Horror Nights last year. And then Andy, you sent
Yeah,
us that
good deal.
clip. You sent us that clip this weekend, and I've listened to it a lot and picked out. I never noticed the little Killer Clowns riff in it before.
Seriously.
Like the doop.
Yeah.
I've never noticed that. Then there's like a whole Ghostbusters section in there that I've never noticed
Calls
before.
himself a fan.
I think because it's a nice, clean recording, and I'm not watching it; I'm just listening to it.
I would just like to point out that everybody's had this shared with them, except for me.
You wouldn't listen to you too.
I love that Killer Clowns riff. That that's my favorite part
Yeah.
because it's
Just so
it's
energetic.
so crunchy and
Yeah.
and dramatic, and I really wanted to feature that because it's the best part of the Killer Clown song by
Yeah.
far.
Yeah,
It encapsulates everything that is Killer Clowns just in that riff. It really does.
Yeah.
Just that
Yep.
energy and craziness and yeah,
that whole show was just awesome.
I know.
I'm glad you guys like it so much. It was a
Absolutely
lot
loved
of fun to make. It was very challenging, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It is. A lot of people like the Lagoon shows. We've said for a long, long time that Universal has really struggled with nighttime shows.
Oh yeah.
Hit that one out the park.
I still haven't seen the Hogwarts ones, and I said this. So we saw Marathon of Mayhem last October. We hadn't seen Cinematic Celebration, which obviously uses the same projections and lights and stuff. So we saw that in February. So saw Marathon of Mayhem first, and then saw Cinematic Celebration second. And I went, yeah, Marathon of Mayhem was way better than that. I sat there, I stood watching Cinematic Celebration going, this is pants. I just want to be watching
Pants, I've heard that in a
I just
long
want to be
time.
watching Marathon of Mayhem at this point because it's far better.
As the kids say, it just don't hit the same.
I very nearly got to work on Cinematic Celebration too, but they gave it to Carl Johnson, and it's probably best too because Carl's a really, really good arranger and has a really good working relationship with the Seattle Symphony, where they recorded that up in Seattle. So I mean, it probably turned out as best as it could with Carl working on it.
Yeah.
Cool.
I would like to hear the industrial remix of the ET theme.
Interesting. Now, you mentioned earlier about how the show was created. Can you talk us through that process a little bit more, but from your point of view?
From my point of view, well, for a show like this, the music comes first.
Yeah.
They put together a scratch track, which is, I think Jason put together the scratch track where it's all just existing pieces of music edited together to show creative intent and timing. And that's like I said, originally it was going to be much longer, and that scratch track was probably 15 minutes long, 10 or 15 minutes long. And so, there's a lot of discussion about that, creative discussion. And then we sort of worked backwards, starting with the finale, and then filled in the rest of the show with all the different segments. And, the show is made in lots of little pieces. I mean, when you stand and watch the show, it's like one long, hopefully it'll feel like one long narrative piece and not just a bunch of pieces. But really, the whole show is done in lots of different pieces. And finally, I mean, I don't even have a full version of the music for the show because, like I said, I didn't do all the music. But I did edit all the music that starts out. I think the music at the beginning of the show is from The Wolfman, the Benicio del Toro movie.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't write that. That was all edited. I think I did some augmentation of that as well. But then, then there's the creepy Circus Calliope stuff at the beginning of Killer Clowns. I, put that together. I performed that. But, it's all, we started with the finale and worked our way back from that, essentially. It would probably, I worked on it for probably, a month or so. I did several versions of the beginning of the finale until we settled on the one that is in the show now. Like I said, the Jason and I worked on for 14, 15 hours one night straight, just to finish it. And not because we were under some kind of time crunch, but just because, it was the flow.
Yeah.
As it were. And then, then later on, I added all the the sound effects for the rewind section and whatever. I think that was one of the last things we did was that. Yeah. So, it's all done in pieces, and, we figure out, then like, the media team will come to me and like, okay, we need 15 seconds of this. We need 12 seconds of that, or we need, okay, that was great, but we need like 5 more seconds of it, and I'll go back into the file and, extend it musically or with, various other time stretching or whatever. And then John Baker, who is a really good composer and producer in his own right, mixed the show on site and is really responsible for how good it sounds on site, getting as much as you can out of the system. And I remember Jason telling me this, like, it was just so loud, and he really wanted it to be like as loud as possible, like a rock concert.
Oh yeah, if you watch a lot of those YouTube videos, there's certain points where it pops the microphone out.
Yeah, I mean, well, when they were mixing it, it was way louder than it played to the public. Universal turned it way down, which is kind of a bummer.
Mm.
Oh yeah,
but yeah, it's all done in a bunch of little pieces, and done and redone and massaged, and until, I mean, I think I was delivering sound effects and other things, little augmentations, like while they were mixing on site.
Wow.
I'd be in the studio and I'd get a call from Jason like, oh, we need this one thing. Can you send me this one thing? And I'm like, sure. Thanks to modern technology, I just pop it up on Dropbox and he pulls it down right there on site.
Yeah. And starting at the end surprised me for a little bit, but then I thought about it and it's like, well, you got to know where you're going.
Yeah.
It kind of makes sense. Right. But yeah. And so, especially something with that, and then with the rewinding nature and everything, well, it definitely makes sense to start there. But we do have to ask you, I might have an idea about it, but what is your favorite part of the show?
My favorite part of the show, I really like the Ghostbusters remix. It's super awesome and fun, and I loved that song growing up as a kid. I loved it. Mm-hmm. And to hear it reimagined like that it's so badass.
Andy, did you actually get to see it in person?
I did not get to see it in person.
Oh,
such a shame.
It surprises me how many creators we talk to in the theme park industry that like, well, you said with Men in Black earlier too. It's like years down the line, usually, if at all, you ever actually like go and see what you worked on.
Right. Well, it's the same too. Like, I did the very first Christmas music for Universal Studios Osaka in 2001 or 2001. It was like right after I did Men in Black. I did this Christmas music, and it was hugely popular for many years. And I never got to see or hear it in the park. And so many other rides that I've done. I did the Survivor ride at Paramount's Great America or wherever it was. I never got to go on that. And Lara Croft Tomb Raider Firefall, I never got to go on that. And like just tons of stuff, especially stuff in different countries.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have gotten to see any of the Warner Brothers stuff, Warner Brothers World Abu Dhabi, but I just decided at my own expense to go out for the opening as like a vacation. And then of course, like within hours of being on the ground, I was immediately put to work. Like, hey, you guys, I'm on vacation. I spent $6,000 to be here. Like,
you gotta sneak this into the next contract. Be like, hey, yeah, I'll work on this. Just I need to do it.
Yeah,
I made it very clear while I was there that any work I was doing was going to cost them a lot.
Yes.
And they were just like, the end phase of any kind of theme park or theme park attraction is just like the money hose is on full blast. So like nothing matters anymore. And it's just like, you can just, send an invoice for however much you want.
Of course, knowing that Dave Cobb was working on Andy, you should have expected him to try and drag you into something.
Yeah. Well, no, it wasn't him. It was Ted King, who's the audio producer for the park, and we were still working on the Plaza show. Not to derail the conversation from Men in Black and Universal, but we did that poor Plaza show so many times, and I still don't even know how it ended up. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, theme park attractions are it's a weird thing to begin with, and it's such a site specific thing. It is a site specific thing, so it's not always easy to get to. I mean,
yeah.
So. But I think kind of Darren, the way it's in, it's like surely it won't cost them that much just to fly you down to be able to see it once.
Yeah, but like that's not really their responsibility.
Yeah, I was like thinking about that too. It's like,
It's a shame though, isn't it?
Yeah,
I
like
know. In an
everybody
ideal
that
world.
did anything, like the graphic, the guy that did the CGI for Fast and
True.
Yeah.
Furious,
Yeah.
like send him down,
That's
and
They wouldn't send him down. They saw him down and say, "Have you seen how bad this is?"
it's to the point where like, all right, well, the whole park is full of free tickets now.
When I went last year to IAPA, I was trying to figure out a way to go like a week or two early. So usually my friends and I will go on a Disney cruise the weekend before IAPA, but we didn't do that last year for a variety of reasons. And I was trying to figure out a way to go down early because IAPA was pretty early in November last year. It was like, I think it was the second week of November. And like Horror Nights went up until like it was 8 or 9 days before the show.
Ugh.
And I was thinking like, oh man, like if I could just figure out like what am I going to do for a whole week in Orlando before IAPA, and it's like obviously, there's a lot to do in Orlando, but like when I'm at the show, like we're going to the parks constantly and there's events there, and like it's not like even I can't spend 2 weeks in theme parks. But I almost got to see it, but I saw the cinematic celebration instead, and I thought it was fine.
Yeah.
It was fine.
Goes back to what I was saying earlier as well about them not putting the music out for it. It's a shame that music isn't out there, or whether it would be nice if they sort of put the show on and got sort of full 4K video of it and put the music on it. Then, because like we said about Men in Black and stuff, and that music not being out there available, at least you could still go and ride the attraction and hear that music in the place it's supposed to be. But as far as Marathon of Mayhem from last year, that's it. It's gone. You won't hear it again in that park because they never repeat anything at Horror Nights. It's done.
I mean, they could release the Men in Black music. I mean, they own it. There's no issues there. It's just a matter of the perceived demand. I mean, there's a very small but vocal minority of people such as yourself that love that music, and like I've said before, it's out there. You can if you are a big enough theme park music nerd, there's certain circles and certain forums and message boards and discords and stuff about that where people pass files around that they definitely shouldn't have.
Okay.
Yeah. We're very hopeful that the virus doesn't affect everything too much, and that Halloween Horror Nights 30 does go ahead, so that we get to experience it. And we really hope for another Lagoon show coming to the event this year and every year, because it's just it adds a crowd eater. It's a fantastic atmosphere.
Yeah.
And last year's was just such a great addition to the event. I know Darren mentioned it as being one of his favorite things in Horror Nights, period. And to us, I mean, we loved it. It was just such an awesome show. So we hope to see that every year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that they would be foolish not to do that.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think last year really stamped its place in Halloween Horror
Definitely.
Nights.
Yeah, it's certainly, I mean, it's certainly very popular. People really loved it. I mean, I really enjoyed seeing all the stuff on Twitter and the message boards and comments on YouTube videos and things like that. It's what's funny is that after I finished the show, I was texting another friend of mine, and I said, I think that this is probably going to be the most popular thing I've written for a theme park. Maybe not the best, but certainly the most loved. Aside from Men in Black with you guys, but like never before has any of my work been so well received.
Yeah, it really was.
Well worth it too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, it was a lot of fun. And it was a lot of fun to work on, and I really hope that there is a Halloween Horror Nights this year. I hope that they figure out how to do that, and with or without social distancing, or who knows what the state of things will be in what is it, 5 months, 4 months.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't imagine a Horror Nights in Orlando without a Marathon of Mayhem show.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
More, that's for sure.
I mean, and they get such a bang for their buck too. I mean, they've already got all that hardware sitting in the lagoon, and literally all they have to do is it's just like get me and Jason in a room. we'll hammer out the music, and then it's literally just like 4 or 5 other people making the media and editing it all together. I mean, it's not as expensive as you would think it would be to do. Certainly for the cost benefit ratio that they get out of it.
Well, This year, you can be like, everybody liked that last one quite a bit. I was going to say.
Hopefully Universal sees this and goes, you know what? We're going to put this out on vinyl and then sell thousands of copies. I will buy 1,000 myself.
Yeah, definitely.
I wish they could, again, even just putting out the finale with the Stranger Things, Killer Clowns, and Ghostbusters music in it. I mean, that would be a whole different deal. And would just would cost, it probably would cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars in reuse fees and publishing.
Yeah.
Right.
Damn.
Yeah. It's just one of those things when you look at, like, music is such a big part of a lot of people's lives. It's so emotional. I mean, we came over, we hosted an event last year, and it was the best week of my life. Marathon of Mayhem, the music in that ended up being such a part of my memory from that week. What are you looking like that for, woman? Because it's like, our wedding wasn't part of it.
Our wedding was crap.
But that music...
The best week of your life.
Yeah.
You realise we spent no time together.
Well, that was the whole point.
You can have the best few years of your life if you want.
Welcome to the show.
Look, I was making up for being stuck in a house with her for the next 3 months, however long it's going to be.
Mom and dad are fighting.
Yep. That's exactly what it is. And the two children just decide, and you just go, yeah. Okay.
But yeah, that soundtrack for that show has just become such a part of the memory of that whole week, probably more than any other piece of music.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, without a doubt.
It's kind of funny, Lee, you mentioned before how, that happens and that song is never going to be, or that kind of show won't be played again in that exact format.
Yeah.
It's very similar to the overall event of Horror Nights, where it's, these houses are around for that year. That's it. They're gone. They may come back in a different incarnation, but it's not what you originally saw.
It's very ephemeral. I mean, it's, I love art like that. I love site and place and time specific art and installations. One of the, you talk about superlatives, but one of the biggest regrets of my life is, do you remember the Banksy installation Dismaland?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
One of the biggest regrets of my life is that I didn't get to see that in person. And I actually had my finger on the trigger to buy a plane ticket to go out there and stand in line to maybe get to go.
Yeah.
And I decided that was pretty stupid, and I didn't do it. But it could have been a very expensive, very boring trip.
Yes.
Very, very easily. But man, I love the idea of just fleeting moments of art, especially in something as permanent as a theme park.
Yeah.
We've all been to the park so many times, and a lot of things never change, and there's some comfort in that. But then I also love a once in a lifetime kind of experience in a park.
Except when you don't get to go all the time, and then they do a house that you really want to see, and then because you're not going that year, you're going to miss it. You're like,
yeah.
I don't know what that feels like. I have no idea.
All right, Derek.
Go to every house every year.
I've started going to Horror Nights in Florida. I missed last year, and I remember a year or two ago, my friend Jason Depew and I, we flew out just to go to Horror Nights, and it got canceled by Hurricane Matthew the weekend we had tickets for.
Oh, no.
Oh.
So, we had both flown down there just to basically go to Horror Nights because it's so much better there than in Hollywood.
Yes.
And we didn't even get to go. We didn't even get to go to any of the parks because everything closed for 2 days.
Ouch. Wow.
Oh, it sucks.
Yeah, it really sucked.
But going back real quick to the show, leaving there, I think everybody was, but man, just you'd leave that show and you'd just be buzzing, like concerts. The only times I ever felt like that really was I went to Rob Zombie's Hellbilly Deluxe tour. It was one of my first concerts I ever went to. When I left there, literally your ears are buzzing, your face is flush red. You're like, oh my gosh, what is this?
Yeah, just the SPLs on your skin.
Exactly, and I felt that for this, and like I said, theme park shows, I get into them, I like them, but nothing like this before.
Yeah, agreed.
So, yeah,
it's a very universal show. That's one of the things Universal loved about it, is it's very, very edgy, very hardcore, and just totally balls to the wall, experience, that you wouldn't get pretty much at any other theme park.
No.
Yeah.
Universal's brand is kind of the anti-Disney in a way.
Yeah, very much.
We had full reign to just go all the way.
Yeah, it really became part of that weekend because we did the private RIP tour
It was a soundtrack to our weekend.
And there was like 12 of us close friends all watching it at midnight on a Sunday night in our airport, and it holds such a special memory.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's like Disney has the kiss goodnight, and Universal has the slap to the face goodnight.
Yes.
Yeah, get out of here.
I know which I prefer.
Yes.
The restaurants are closed. Go.
Yeah.
Hot fit goodnight.
Awesome. Cool. Right, well, that is going to wrap up episode 400. Andy, it's been awesome to talk about
So much has.
two of our favourite things at the parks.
My pleasure, and congratulations on 400 episodes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are going to end the show with another Universal Is, but I
Us?
did ask Andy to do this one for
Good.
us. It's become a standard thing now when we ask our guests to do it. So, of course, if you want to be involved, all you've got to do is send us your answer to what Universal is in 3 words or less and send it to us at podcast@uuopodcast.com. And Andy, can you tell us what Universal is to you, please?
Yeah, it's funny. Is when you asked me, I didn't even have to think about it. I just was just like, oh, that's what it is. And to me, in 3 words, Universal is my big break.
Oh,
Awesome.
I like that.
Thanks, everyone, and we will see you next week.
Guess that wraps things up for another Unofficial Universal Orlando podcast. You guys did all right. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Pinterest, keyword UUO Podcast. Listen and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or anywhere podcasts are found. You can find our blog at uuopodcast.com. Send us your spews, which Lou gets your poo recordings, questions, or comments to podcast@uuopodcast.com. Check out our friends the Theme Park Duo and our awesome sponsors Mouse and Muggle Travel Company. So, until next time, don't give up your day job, say cheese, and see you later.